learning about an electrical component called a resistor, and they look like this. And I need to know which one of these resistors would be the best one to put in a specific device. Remember, we looked at a radio that was disassembled and we saw there were 21 different resistors at least. So they all had certain values for certain jobs. So for example, if I want a resistor that's going to determine the volume or how loud or quiet the radio gets, I'd need to figure out the correct resistor. Now, a resistor is the component that's been designed to provide specific amounts of electrical resistance. And that resistance is what enables or disables the flow of current through that circuit. So remember, current is measured in amps. We have an ammeter right here, and this one measures milliamperes. So we would need to convert it because it is 1/1000th of an amp. And we have a voltmeter, and that measures voltage in volts, represented by the letter V. Now, this ammeter is milliamperes, so if I want to change that into amps, I would need to do a division problem to make sure that I have the correct value for my equation. When I'm calculating resistance, it is measured in something called ohms. Oops. And ohms is represented by a symbol that looks like this. Voltage is measured in volts with a V, and amps, oddly enough, is represented by the letter I. And that's because the father of electromagnetism decided to call amps current intensity. And he used a French word for it, but intensity, the current intensity, is what brought him to the symbol of I for amps, how much current flow is running through that system. And when I want to calculate ohms, my formula is how much resistance is equal to the amount of volts over the amount of amps. If I connected a circuit together and I had a battery and I had my 2 meters in it and I had one of these resistors in there and I needed to figure out if I needed more or less resistance for my device to work correctly, I would need to figure out what is the resistance that each of these resistors has a value of. So say that I put my circuit together and my voltage that I got when I did this, my meter said 1.2 volts. And my amps actually was milliamperes, and it was 130, because that's what my meter says, right? It's 0 to 500. But I would need to convert that by moving this decimal point back 3 times, because that would take it from 1/1000th to being actually 0.13 amps. So if I took 1.2 volts and I divided it by 1.13 amps, I would get a value of 9.23 ohms of resistance. So that's the amount of resistance that particular resistor created in my circuit. And that is how you calculate resistance.